How are you all today? Pretty good? Good. Sorry I was a little bit extra late today. Just lots of little things going on to make me more late. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. So anyhow, today I thought we would start with a front page article. Over the years, we've talked about Hong Kong on and off. I was just talking to a friend yesterday, and she said that she's going to visit Hong Kong with some friends in about 2 weeks. And I told her, I said, well, I have not been to Hong Kong in many years, but I used to go there a lot. I was talking to another friend who said they haven't been to Hong Kong in many years because they don't want to go or they're afraid to go because they think there's been a lot of changes that have gone on in Hong Kong. So anyhow, recently we've had this trial in the court in Hong Kong for people who are charged with crimes against the government. And of course, some of these people are very well known, like this guy, Jimmy Lai. And I think many of you remember he is the publisher of Apple Daily newspaper. Now, Taiwan used to also have a 苹果日报, right? But in Hong Kong, it's where it started. That was the original newspaper over there in Hong Kong. And I still remember when they founded that newspaper, I thought, well, that's a really unusual name. Why would you call your newspaper Apple? But of course, everyone remembers it, right? It's a clever name because you never forget. It's not like the News or the Times or the whatever. You know, there's these names that we use a lot with newspapers, but when you say Apple, everybody remembers it. So anyhow, I honestly don't know how they picked that name, but it's a clever name. So anyhow, the article here, it says, Jimmy Lai begins to testify in national security trial in Hong Kong. Now, of course, a trial is when you go to a trial at court, it means that you're in court because you're being tried for something, right? So if you are accused of a crime or the police arrest you for something, then you need to go to a trial. Or if you sue somebody, you know, or you're sued by somebody, you know, 被告. Across the street, we have the Taichung Courthouse, District Court. Oh, it's over there. I forget which direction we are. But yeah, I'm sure there are trials there every day. Now, a trial can also be something else. If you are going through a difficult time, for example, let's say you have been very sick recently, or you have been having many financial problems, money problems, you might say that I am facing a financial trial or a difficult trial in my life. It means a difficult time, okay? So the word trial doesn't only refer to court, like going to the 法院. It might also remind, you could say, right now my life is full of trials, okay? That means I'm going through many different challenges or difficulties in my life. So again, that word is very common. People use it in very different ways. Trying. I guess you could say that we are going through trying times. If you say trying times, it means a time that is difficult. Like if it is a trying time, or we might say a circumstance. Circumstance would be more like a situation, right? It's a word that I don't think we've talked about. What are your circumstances? What is your situation? I don't know if we've learned that word before, but then we can use trying, becomes a 形容詞. So it means like, yeah, difficult time, a trying circumstance. So actually, this word here, I don't know if we've learned this before, but it's kind of like the word a situation. What are your current circumstances? What are the circumstances around the, you know? So it means what's going on? What's the situation? Okay. So why don't we say together, circumstance, situation, situation. Okay, and then this word, trying time. Right. So if someone says right now it's a very trying time for me and my family, it means it's a very difficult time for me and my family. Okay. And, you know, circumstances, for example, let's say somebody dies, you know, there's a death, and somebody says, what are the circumstances around his death? It means what happened? What caused his death? What were the circumstances? Okay. What happened? Situation. Okay. Okay, so let's say this word too. Very simple. Trial. Trial. Okay, so yeah, this is a good word, and it doesn't only refer to court. So it says Jimmy Lai begins to testify. Okay, so what does testify mean? Yeah. Yeah, it basically means to tell your story, right? If someone says, well, what happened? And you say, well, let me testify. I'm going to testify. It means to kind of tell what happened to you. What's going on? What's my story? Okay. So of course, if you go to a court, the court is supposed to hear all sides of the story. That means what do you say? What does he say? Or what does she say? What happened? And so you have to testify. Now, when you say testify, often it has a very official sounding meaning, like you go to court, you go to the 法院, and they ask you what happened, and you tell them. But you could also use this in a more casual way. Like you can say he testified that, he really does not like this restaurant. But it's usually used in a more official way. And this is a 动词. What is the 名词 version of that word? Yeah, well, actually, that's a good. I was thinking of a different word, but actually, there's two words. Testimony, okay? So often we say to give a testimony. That's the word we use, give, Give. But another word that he just mentioned is a testament. This word is not as common. Yeah, it's often used. I think I'm spelling that right. It's often used for like religious, 信教 sort of idea. Because, for example, one of the most common ones is in the Bible, 圣经, they have the Old Testament and the New Testament. And when we say testament, of course, we're talking about, it's like God's word. It's like, what did he say? So it's almost like official, very official testimony. It's like, what are you saying? But testimony is often very common. I mean, he gave his testimony in court, okay? And then, or we can say he testified in court. Okay, so why don't we start with that word, testify. Testify. Testimony. Testimony. And then this word, testament. Testament. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Testament. Yeah, I was thinking of testimony. Yeah. He's a defendant. I mean, he's being charged with crime, and I hear I think he could be in jail for over 10 years if they find him guilty. So yeah, he's definitely a defendant. So yeah. So we'll read about that. And of course, they are charged, him and I forget how many, like over 40 people are charged with violating the national security law. Now, this is the law that many people protested against. They were very unhappy with this. But Hong Kong has a national security law that says if you say something or do something that is against national security, you can go to jail. Yeah. Well, to be honest, I've thought about it. I thought, no, probably, I'm sure I would say, here's what I would say. If I were to kind of calculate my risk, I would say if I went to Hong Kong, it's probably like a 98% chance that nothing would happen, right? But people are always thinking, well, what if, what if, I'll give you an example. When I communicate with my friends here in Taiwan, sometimes I send messages that are not very friendly about, they don't say nice things about China or the Gongchangdang. So what if they found that out? What if they found my messages and they said, oh, you violated the national security law, And I think under the National Security Act, they can search your phone, they can search your emails, they can look at anything you've done, and they can say, oh, well, you said this about China, or you said this about the CCP, Gongchangdang, so therefore you're charged with violating national security law. So this is where But in my mind too, there's another thing. In my mind, it's the principle of that's the idea, right? Because the government there has become very anti-democratic. I feel like, why should I go there? I don't want to support them by going there. So anyhow, I love Hong Kong. I mean, it's one of my favorite cities, but my friends who live in Hong Kong say it's really changed over the last 5 years. And I know many foreigners have been leaving Hong Kong. So anyhow, yeah, I honestly think I could go to Hong Kong and it'd be fine. But I think many foreigners now are thinking, what if, what if something happened? Yeah. Okay. So anyhow, here it says talkative and commandeering. Okay, this is a good word. We'll talk about this. Talkative and commandeering, as he testified in court yesterday, Hong Kong media mogul Jimmy Lai still seemed like a man used to being in charge, despite spending most of the past 4 years in jail. Okay, so first of all, they describe what he's like in court. Talkative, I think you know that word, right? When you say talkative, what does that mean? It's talk a lot, right? So, yeah, it's fine. When I was a child, my parents' friends actually used to say I was very talkative. Yeah. So, but it is funny when you look at it's very entertaining to watch little boys and little girls about 3 or 4 or 5 years old. I find the girls are much more talkative than the boys. They talk and talk and talk, but boys can be talkative too. So yeah, it just means you like to talk a lot. Why don't we say it together? Talkative. Talkative. Okay, but the second word is very interesting. Commandeering. Okay, now if you look at this word here, what do we see here? What's this word? Command. Okay, so you know the word command, to command someone. If you are commandeering, what does that seem to mean? It means you have a very strong personality, like you want to be in charge. You act like you are in charge. Okay, so if someone is very commandeering, it means when you look at them, you think, that person, they're acting like a leader. They're acting like somebody who tells other people what to do. Commandeering it's not really positive or negative, right? It could be a positive word if someone's commandeering in a good way. They like to take charge. But it could also be negative, right? If someone's too commandeering and they're telling everybody what to do, that's not good too. So it can be either way. So why don't we say, well, first of all, let's say this first part, command. Command. And then the second part, commandeering. Commandeering. Yeah, it's pronounced differently. Yeah. Commanding. Yeah, you could say. But sometimes we talk about someone has a very commanding presence. It means their presence, their personality, the way they seem. When you look at them, you think, that person must be the boss, or they must be in charge, right? It's their personality or their presence. Okay, but I was just thinking of a funny word, a funny expression with command. If sometimes people want to be in charge, or somebody, you want to please somebody. There's an expression we see sometimes. It says yeah. So this is kind of a pleasant way of putting it. Like it's kind of a funny thing, right? But if someone says, hey, can you go do that? Or can you help me with that? And you say, okay, your wish is my command. That means that I'll do whatever you want. I'll do whatever you please. I want to please you. So your wish, it means你的希望, right? Is my command, is my,命令or whatever. It's what I will do. I will follow whatever you want. I'll do whatever you want. Okay? So your wish is my command. Let's say it together. Your wish is my command. One more time. Your wish is my command. Right. Okay. So let's go back to this. It says talkative and commandeering as he testified in court. Okay. Now he's in court. He's testifying yesterday. Hong Kong media mogul. We've learned this word before. What's a mogul? Yeah, it's like a big businessman, or I guess it could be a woman. Although for some reason, this word tends to get used with men more than women for some reason, maybe because there's more men in that position. But the other word that we often see is tycoon, which is also kind of a big businessman. So obviously, if you think of someone like Elon Musk or Donald Trump even, I mean, he was a businessman. We often use that word tycoon or mogul. Although for some reason, mogul, I often get used with people who are Métis in the media. We say media mogul. This word, this expression gets used a lot. Okay, so let's say it together. Mogul, mogul, tycoon, tycoon. And it's very interesting because I believe both of these words have their roots in India. So these words came out of India, and I think my guess, I don't know for sure. Well, but during the British, when the British were there, you know, India used to be a British colony, I think during that time, the British adopted those words from India. They took those words and they used them. Well, the word, the way you spell it actually is spelled differently. It's spelled Mugal, Mughal. Yeah. So that's the word they use for the ruler. It's like a ruler in India, okay? But no, it doesn't come, I think it comes from this word, Mughal. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I believe tycoon is an Indian origin word. Yeah. I'll have to go look that up. But yeah, anyhow, it's not a European word. It comes from somewhere else. So anyhow, media mogul Jimmy Lai, he's still, you know, cause remember, this guy's been in jail for almost 4 years. So he still seemed like a man used to being in charge. Okay. So his presence was very commandeering, despite spending most of the past 4 years in jail. So, well, yeah, he's a big businessman. He's used to, you know, being in charge. So anyhow, so let's read this together. Talkative and commandeering, as he testified in court yesterday, Hong Kong media mogul Jimmy Lai still seemed like a man used to being in charge, despite spending most of the past 4 years in jail. Okay. You know, I want to point something out here. In English, I don't know about Chinese or other languages, but jail generally is a place where you are held before you are found guilty. Okay. But when you are finally found guilty, you are sent to prison. Okay. So there's a slight difference. A lot of people don't understand. They confuse, they mix up the two. But yeah, jail, let's say tonight you go out and you're drinking and driving and you hit somebody or you do something bad and the police arrest you and they hold you. They'll put you in jail, but they don't put you in prison. Prison is like, you know, a place where you're there for, you know, a long time, like months or years. Okay. So there is a slight difference. Why don't we say this word again? Jail. And then that word, prison. Okay. So there is a difference. Okay, let's go on. It says here, the 76-year-old took the witness stand in his trial for collusion with foreign forces, breaking the silence he has kept over 5 previous trials arising from his participation in the territory's now quashed democracy movement. Okay, so he's 76 years old. Now it says here, the witness stand. The witness stand is the place where you stand. It's a place in the courtroom where you stand to testify. Okay, and in different courts it's a little bit different, but usually it's similar, right? When they say let's call the witness, the person who's going to testify, and then they come and they stand in a box or a place. That's called a witness stand. The stand is a 名词, okay? It's not a 动词. So it's a stand, it's a place, it's a location. So we call that the witness stand, okay? So he took the witness stand. So this is a word that we use in court a lot, to take the witness stand. It means that you come to, or you stand in the witness stand. We use the word take or took, okay? It's a little bit unusual, but that's how we say it. Okay, so he took the witness stand in his trial for collusion with foreign forces. Now, foreign forces, it's a very unclear word, right? It could mean anybody, anything, means somebody who's not in China. Okay, and the word collusion, we've talked about this word, I think, at least once or twice before. It comes from the verb to collude. Okay, so to collude means what? Yeah, it means basically to cooperate. But it often means cooperate in a, like he said, in a secret way, or in a way that's meant to, like part of a plot or a plan against somebody. So if you collude with somebody, it means that you're secretly working with them or cooperating with them to do something. And often that thing is not probably good for somebody else. Like here, colluding with foreign forces obviously seems to mean that he secretly cooperated with some foreign forces, government or something, to do something against the Chinese government. Okay, so that's the word we use. So why don't we start with this verb, to collude. To collude. Collusion. Collusion. You know, a word that we've talked about many times, it's very similar, is to plot, right? To plot. You plot against somebody. You're trying to do something against them. I'm plotting against the government. Okay. So here it says collusion with foreign forces. Breaking the silence. Okay. When you say when he broke his silence, or I'm breaking my silence, it means I was silent for a while or a long time, and now I'm going to talk. I'm going to speak up. So what do? We break the silence. Okay. There's many ways you can break the silence. If we're in a room and we decide that we're going to be very quiet for a while, and we're going to all study or do something, and suddenly somebody breaks the silence, means they start talking. They break it. So that's the word. That's an expression we use a lot. Break the silence. Breaking the silence. He has kept over 5 previous trials. So this isn't his first trial. He's had 5 previous trials. Why? Arising from, it means coming from. It's why does he have these trials arising from? It means coming from his participation in the territory. Okay, now of course Hong Kong is a special territory. Territories now quash democracy movement. Of course, Hong Kong had a democracy movement, a movement to a campaign to promote democracy, 民主. But it says here, the territories now, 现在, now quashed. Okay, what does this word quash mean? It's a 动词. What does it mean? Yeah, I heard someone say smashed. Okay, it means to suppress, to put down. Okay, if you quash something, it means you squash it down. So it's funny. There's some words that are kind of similar. One, of course, is smash. Okay. There's another word that's actually very similar, squash. But squash has a slightly different meaning to it. Squash means to press together very closely. Okay, I'll tell you where we use the word squash. Squash is a much more ordinary word. Let's say you want to sit in a sofa. There's a safa, and there's already 3 other people there, and they say, "Oh no, you can sit here," and so everybody will squash together. Okay, it means they'll push themselves together so that the other person can sit there. So we say we squashed into the seat. It means to push. So this word is not usually used. Squash is not used in this way, but smash, you could say it that way, to destroy. But quash, I think, actually, I'm going to share one more word that we've talked about before. It's the word suppress. Okay, so to suppress means to put down, to shove down, okay, to suppress. So when I think of to quash, I think of the word to suppress, okay, to to shove it down, to step on it, and then it cannot come up again, okay? So why don't we say this word together? Quash. Quash. Okay. So this word can be used in many different ways. Let's say, for example, we're having a meeting and we're trying to make a decision, and maybe most people agree on something on the plan, but maybe a few of you say, no, we disagree, but we just kind of quash your ideas. We just say, no, we don't want to even hear that. Swana, we're going to do it this way. So we say we quashed his objections or their objections. We quash their ideas. It means we kind of put those down. We push, press those down. Okay. Any questions about that? Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, so he's right. Squash has two very different meanings. One is it's kind of like a nangua. Yeah, a pumpkin, a squash. But, well, there are different kinds of squashes, I think. I think there's more than one. It's more than one kind of squash. Here, let me put it this way. I think a pumpkin is a kind of squash. Yeah. So I think that's the way we could think about it. But yeah, and then the other one is there's a sport, 运动, called squash. Actually, I think they're slightly different. I've played racquetball, but I've never played squash. Against the wall, usually with two people, and you have a small racket, and you have to hit the ball against the wall, and it bounces, and the other person has to return it. So I think it's, I believe, and I have to go look this up. I think racquetball and squash are slightly different. It might be the ball is different, or something else is different. I've played racquetball when I was in university. We used to play a lot of racquetball. Good sport, lots of fun. But I think squash is slightly different. But I have to go look that up. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, so squash actually has other meanings too. How do you say racquetball or squash in Chinese? Oh, okay, yeah. It's a fun game. You can really get a good workout. Okay, so any other questions about this? Okay, let's read this together. The 76-year-old took the witness stand in his trial for collusion with foreign forces, breaking the silence he has kept over 5 previous trials. Let's say it again. Previous trials arising from his participation in the territories now quashed democracy movement. Democracy movement. Right. And of course, I think, movement is, movement sounds like to move, right? 动作, but it also means like when many people are working together to reach a goal. Like sometimes we say, if there's a war, for example, we might have a peace movement. They're promoting peace. If there's a country with no democracy, they might be promoting, we could say human rights, 人权, a human rights movement or democracy movement. Okay, so there's many kinds of movements. It's not, of course, when I move my hand, that's a movement too. So yeah, different movements. Okay, so it says here, Lai's case is one of the most prominent prosecuted under Hong Kong's national security law imposed by Beijing in 2020. And Western countries and rights groups have demanded his release, raising concerns over his health. Okay, so of course, Jimmy Lai is very famous. So it says his case is one of the most prominent prosecuted. Okay, his case is one of the most prominent cases prosecuted. Now, prosecute, a prosecutor is a 检察官, right? So prosecuted is a 动词. A prosecutor will prosecute a case, okay? If someone says, well, that guy or that person stole something, then the prosecutor will prosecute them. They will 起诉, and then they will prosecute them. Okay, but prominent means what? Yeah, it means very high profile. It's very, everyone can see it, okay? So we can say this is a very prominent case, but prominent has many different uses. You could say he is a very prominent person in our country, means he's very famous, okay? If someone has a big nose, their beads is very big, you can say his nose is very prominent. It's very easy. His nose sticks up, right? So prominent can be used to describe a shape of something, like how big is it, or you could say someone's status or position. They're very famous, okay? So why don't we say together, prominent. Prominent. Okay, so his case is one of the most, we could say one of the most famous or well-known, prosecuted under Hong Kong's national security law. This is that controversial law imposed by Beijing. So of course, laws are imposed by governments, okay? When a government passes a law and they say, okay, everyone has to follow that law, we impose that law. It means that we place that on everyone. Everyone has to follow that, right? So we've talked about this word before. To impose on somebody is to kind of push something on them, okay? Now, we've said many times, if you're bothering somebody and you feel kind of 不好意思, you might say, oh, I'm sorry to impose on you. It means sorry to bother you or cause you trouble or to push something on you. But that means I'm imposing. If we describe somebody as being very imposing, ing, it means that they have a very strong presence. Like their presence is very commanding. Yeah, like that word commanding we just talked about. Very imposing. Okay, when you see them, you kind of feel like, this person seems very powerful. Okay, so why don't we say together, imposed. Imposed. And then we said the word 形容词, imposing. Imposing. So this national security law was imposed by Beijing in 2020. And it says Western countries and rights groups, this is of course human rights, 人权, have demanded his release, raising concerns over his health. Now we say raising concerns, it means to express your concern about something. You can say, I raise my concerns over his idea. I have worries about his idea. Okay, so they're worried about his health. I mean, he's getting older too, of course. So let's read this together. Lai's case is one of the most prominent. Let's say it again. Prominent. Prosecuted under Hong Kong's national security law. Let's say that part again. National security law imposed by Beijing in 2020. And Western countries and rights groups have demanded his release, raising concerns over his health. Okay, and that's a photo caption. So let's go on. It says here, however, Lai looked well and spirited, entering the courtroom smiling and flanked by 4 prison officers. Let's read this too. Sporting a pair of thick-rimmed glasses and a green jumper, he waved to the public gallery as he sat in the dock. Okay, now there's some interesting words here. Okay, so first of all, it says here, even though the people are concerned about his health, his 身体健康, it says Lai looked well and spirited. Okay, now if someone is spirited, what does that mean? Yeah, energetic, full of spirit, right? So if you act in a spirited way, it means you act with energy. People seem very. Another word I think that's very similar to spirited would be maybe lively. Lively, lively or spirited. Okay, So if someone, you could describe a person's actions or their appearance as very spirited. Okay, why don't we say together, spirited, spirited, and that word too, lively, lively. Yeah, someone seems very alive and well, right? They seem, yeah. So he looked well and spirited, entering the courtroom, smiling and flanked by 4 prison officers. What does flanked by mean? Yeah, accompanied by, right? Now, the word flank actually means on the side of, right? So if you can say, if you are flanked by, means there's 4 prison officials, officers on either side of you, or on each side, on maybe 2 on each side, I don't know. But yeah, flanked by means with, kind of walking with, or on the side of. Yeah. Sandwich means push between, because you know what a 三明治 is, right? 三明治 has 2 pieces of bread, right? 面包, and then in between there's something. So if something is sandwiched between something else, it means it is pushed between 2 things. If you can say, I was on the bus, I was sandwiched between 2 friends or 2 other passengers. It means I was sitting between 2 other people. One was here and one was there, and they're kind of like sandwiched, like, yeah. Well, but we don't really know. Maybe he was, but I think the idea of sandwich is you're actually pressed against somebody. Like, remember the word squash? We are squashed between 2 people. So sandwich means like you're kind of pressed between 2 people. Whereas here, he's not, maybe they're walking on either side of him or they're next to him, but doesn't mean they're pressing against him, okay? Oh, sandwich board. We say, yeah, we call it a sandwich board for 广告, right? I haven't seen that in a long time, yeah. But yeah, we call that a sandwich board. You know, what he's talking about is, I don't know if I ever saw that in Taiwan, but in America, people would wear this board with one sign here and one sign behind them. It would come around their head, and it would have a 广告, you know, and you would walk down the street, and we call that a sandwich board, you know, like a B-O-A-R-D, a board, like, because it's a 板, right? What? Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, in America, a long time ago, people used to have those, but I don't think people like to do that anymore. So anyhow, it says here, he entered the courtroom smiling and flanked by 4 prison officials. Let's say this together, flanked. Flanked. Okay. Now it says here, there's some other words here. It says sporting a pair of thick rimmed glasses. Now, of course, glasses are 眼镜, right? But thick rim means the rim of the glass, you know, the rim is the edge of your glasses, right? So actually another word we use for 眼镜, we could say thick framed, because, you know, your glasses have a frame, right? We call that, we can say a rim or a frame. F-R-A-M-E, right? You know, like a picture frame, right? So your glasses have a rim or a frame. So we could say thick framed glasses. You know, that edge of your glasses is thicker. You know, some glasses, they don't have a rim, or the rim is very thin, okay? So you don't see it. So we could say thick rim or thick frame glasses. Why don't we say together, thick rimmed? Thick rimmed. And then let's use that other word, thick framed. Thick framed. Okay, now here it says sporting, okay, a pair of glasses. When you say sporting, I think we've talked about this before, but sporting simply means what? Displaying or wearing, okay? You could say today he was sporting a new pair of shoes. It means he's wearing a new pair of shoes. It's a funny way of saying it, but it kind of, like he said, it's kind of the way of like to show off or to show. It doesn't mean like you're being very proud or something, but you could say, oh, I see today you're sporting a new suit or a new watch or whatever, you know, that it's just to wear something, usually so that other people can see it, you know, so sporting a pair of thick frame glasses, okay. Now, of course, with 眼镜, we always say a pair of, right? A pair of glasses, a pair of shoes, a pair of socks, okay, gloves. Okay, so a pair of thick frame glasses and a green jumper. Now, this is a very funny word. Jumper is a British word, okay? It just means sweater, like a pullover sweater, okay? I think some of you, are maybe 1 or 2 of you, are wearing jumpers. Wool, maybe, or it could be anything. I mean, polyester, wool. But you know what a sweater is, right? Many of you wear sweaters. Well, probably right now you're getting ready to wear sweaters. It's getting a little bit cooler. Okay, so sweater. Okay, and it's a sweater. I think a jumper is usually a sweater that you pull over your head, right? You don't button it up, pull it over your head. So we call it in America, we usually say sweater. But if you said jumper to Americans, they'd be like, I think many Americans would be like, huh, what's that? They wouldn't know what you're talking about. So jumper is a British word. So let's say together, sweater, sweater, jumper, jumper. Okay, so we could say he's wearing a green sweater. Okay, he waved to the public gallery. Now, if you go to a courtroom, you'll probably see there's a place, well, sometimes it's up there and sometimes it's down there, but a place where the public can sit and listen to the court case, right? You're not part of the trial, but you're just listening. And so we call that a public gallery. Now, gallery, I think you think, well, art gallery, right? You go to an art, go to the gallery and see art, but gallery is usually just means a big room, right? So a public gallery means a place in the courtroom where the public can sit, okay? So he waved to the public gallery as he sat in the dock. Now, this word dock, you might think, well, that sounds like a harbor, you know, 港口, right? You have the 码头, right? The dock. But here in a courtroom, a dock is a special seat where the defendant, where the person who is on trial sits. Yeah, it's like a box. Yeah, or stand. Actually, that's another word. A stand or dock or box. It's a special like place where people sit when they're on trial. Okay? So, yeah, anyhow, in case you're wondering. Mm-hmm. Oh, jumper? Okay. So, yeah, I know the Japanese take lots of English words and they turn them into Japanese words, which is funny. So, yeah. Anyhow, let's read this together. However, Lai looked well, and spirited, entering the courtroom, smiling and flanked by four prison officers, sporting a pair of thick-rimmed glasses. Again, thick-rimmed glasses and a green jumper. He waved to the public gallery. As he sat in the dock. Okay. Yeah, I just saw yesterday in the newspaper they were concerned about this. Not just Jimmy Lai, but all the people who are on trial in Hong Kong. Yeah. So it says here, from the beginning of his testimony, there's that word testimony, okay? From the beginning of his testimony, the tycoon, and there's the word tycoon here, now they're using this word, was strident, describing how he had got into the media business to participate in delivering information, which is delivering freedom. Okay, now there's at least one good word here that we've never learned. Okay, so the beginning of his testimony, we could say from the start, from the beginning of his testimony, his talking, the tycoon was strident. This word strident, I don't think we've talked about this before. What does that mean? No, that's different. Stride, you're thinking of to stride or S-T-R-I-D, but if this is a 形容词, if you say he made a strident argument or he is very strident, it means someone who is very firm or sometimes we say very vocal. They're talking very loudly, okay? They're very firm and loud and vocal in the way they talk. It's a voice. It's your 声音. So when you say a strident, he spoke stridently, or a strident statement, it means his voice was very loud and very strong, okay? So you can think of the word strong and loud. Yeah. So someone's very strident in talking about something. Like, sometimes someone is very angry or upset about something, and they're very strident in their what they're saying. Okay, it could be in a kind of a firm way. There's a word that I'm thinking of right now. If you like to push your ideas, we say sometimes people like to assert. So then we can say assertive. Yeah, assert means to push your idea, to assert something. I asserted that I have the right idea. My plan is good. Or you can say, here, I'm very assertive. It means I like to push my ideas. So sometimes when someone is very assertive, the way they talk can be very strident. It's very strong and loud. Okay? So why don't we say it together? Strident. Strident. And of course, if you want to turn this into a 副词, you can say stridently. Stridently. And then this is not exactly the same, but the ideas kind of go together. Assert. Assert. Assertive. Assertive. Okay. So he was strident, describing how he had got into the media business. Okay. Or, we could say why or how. To what? To participate in delivering information, okay? To deliver, that's what a newspaper does, to deliver information, which is delivering freedom, okay? So if you have good information, if you're getting the news, that's very important to a democracy, to freedom, is good information, okay? So let's read this together. From the beginning of his testimony, the tycoon was strident. Strident. Describing how he had got into the media business to participate in delivering information, which is delivering freedom. His outlets were always in support of freedom, he said, describing himself as a businessman and social activist. Okay, so outlets, of course, means his news outlets. I think 苹果日报 they had a newspaper, and I think they had maybe a magazine, I'm not sure. Probably had a website, but so those are all different outlets. How do you distribute the news? How do you send out the news? Okay. Oh yeah, TV show. Yeah, I forgot about that. So TV program. So his outlets were always in support of freedom, and he described himself as a businessman and a social activist. We've talked about the word activist, right? Activist is somebody who acts or pushes for something, right? If you are a human rights activist, it means you fight for 人权, for human rights. If you are a democracy activist, you push or fight for democracy. So a social activist means, it doesn't only mean democracy. It could be anything that helps or promotes society. Maybe that's, job, labor rights, or it could be human rights. It could be animal rights, but something, yeah, what? Or environmental protection, 环保, those are all, I would say, social issues. So you could say a social activist, okay? Why don't we say that word together? Activist. Activist. Okay, so let's read this. His outlets were always in support of freedom, he said, describing himself as a businessman and social activist. Social activist. Okay. Yeah. That's a little bit strange. Usually you just say social activist. Oh. Yeah. We can use the word social movement. That's a very common word. We can say what kind of social movements are there in your country? So there might be many social movements, but usually when we say activists, we just say social activists. We don't have the word movement. No, it would mean someone who fights for social movements like that. Yeah, could be many different things. Okay, so here it says, clearly used to, used to authority, he was almost prickly at times, such as when asked why he had retired from his media company, Next Digital Limited, after 2014. I am the boss. If I want to retire, I can retire, he said. So it says here, clearly used to authority. If you're used to authority, it means, of course, you have this 习惯, right? You're in charge, right? You're used to being in charge. So clearly, it's obvious that he's used to being, the boss, to being an authority. Okay, he was almost prickly at times. Now, this is a very funny 形容词. If you are prickly, what does that mean? It can be, but I think sometimes it means somebody who is, aggressive, or someone who is easily, not really. It means easily offended. If you are prickly, it means someone offended you or made you upset easily. Okay, so if we talk about someone who is a prickly, do you know when we talk about a 水果 that is prickly, what kind of fruit are prickly? Pineapple, yeah, that's a good example. Because what does a pineapple have? It has many points, right? Yeah, and we call that prickly because if something sharp hits your skin, it pricks your skin, right? So if something is prickly, like a pineapple, cactus. Okay, a cactus is the ultimate. How do you say cactus in Chinese? Yeah, a cactus is a very prickly plant, right? Because it has many sharp points on it. So if we say a person is prickly, it means that they, like he said, it could be they could offend other people. But I think often it means too that they're easily offended. If you say something, they might get very aggressive. Like, you say, you look tired today. And they're like, what do you mean? Why do you think I look tired? Do you think what? Yeah, that's another word, testy. Yeah, it just means, it kind of means like, they get upset easily. So if someone says, I don't really like your idea. What do you mean you don't like my idea? What's wrong? What, don't you, so that's, we say that someone like that is prickly or testy, okay? So why don't we say together, prickly, prickly. Right, so this can describe someone's gushing, their personality, but it could also describe like a cactus or a fruit, a pineapple, Yeah, that's a condition, right? It's like when it's too hot and they sweat and they get this rash, I think. Isn't that a condition? It's a physical condition. Yeah, it's a medical term. Like I think I'm not a doctor, but I think it's like, sometimes when it gets very hot and people are sweating and they get this rash on their skin, I think that's called prickly heat. It's a kind of condition, skin condition. I think. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, or something like that. I'm not sure. Maybe you have to put something on it. But yeah. So prickly. I know there's a kind of fruit called a prickly pear. I don't know really what it is, but anyhow, yeah. So anyhow, let's say one more time, prickly, and then that word testy. Okay. And then let's say the word above it, cactus. Cactus. Right. If you go to the desert, Samoa, or the desert in Southwest America, like Arizona, New Mexico, you'll see lots of cactus. Sometimes they're very big and sometimes they're very small. I know you can buy them here as plants for your house too. Water in the cactus, yeah. Like I've never tried this, of course, but I hear if you cut it open, there's water inside you can drink. So, yeah. Hopefully, I never have to do that. It says here he was almost prickly at times, almost prickly. Okay. When asked why he had retired from his media company. Now, his media company is called Next Digital Limited after 2014. So he said, I'm the boss. If I want to retire, I can retire. So he's being very Assertive, very strong. Yeah, you see, yeah. Okay, so why don't we read this? Clearly used to authority. Used to authority. He was almost prickly at times, such as when asked why he had retired from his media company, Next Digital Limited, after 2014. I am the boss. If I want to retire, I can retire, he said. Okay. And I agree, right? He's the boss. He can retire, right? Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Sure. But I think either way, he's being tried, because even if you're a private, even if he retired and he's still a social activist, the court could still find him guilty of these charges. But yeah, I think if he's no longer in charge, officially in charge of the newspaper or the media company, and the media company is doing stuff, well, then he could say, well, it's not my responsibility, right? I didn't do that. They did that. But yeah, I don't think it makes a big difference to this court. So it says here, however, he described a deep sense of responsibility for his outlets, explaining why he made himself executive chairman of Next Digital just a month before the security law came into force. So here it's kind of like he's inserting himself again into the company. So he made himself executive chairman of that company a month before the security law came into force. It means when we say came into force, it means it became law. It became active law. The government will affect it. When the government passes a new law, sometimes there's a period until the law comes into force. It means the law is actually enforced. Okay. We use the word to enforce the law. Means to uphold the law, right? If the police, their job is to enforce the law, right? If you're driving too fast, the police should enforce the law. They should stop you and say you're going too fast, maybe give you a fine. But sometimes there's a period before the law is enforced, okay? So here it says, he described a deep sense of responsibility. This expression, sense of responsibility, is a very common expression. You can say, I have a strong sense of responsibility for my company, or I have a strong sense of responsibility for my children, or my friends, okay? It means I feel like I need to be responsible for them, okay? So that's a very common way of saying it. Let's say together, sense of responsibility. Sense of responsibility. Okay, so let's read this. However, he described a deep sense of responsibility for his outlets, explaining why he made himself executive chairman of Next Digital just a month before the security law came into force. Okay. It's right for me to take up the responsibility of the company if anything happened to it as an owner, he said. And then let's read the second sentence. It says, throughout the day, Lai answered quickly and confidently, frequently jumping in before his defense lawyer had even finished asking the question. Okay, so here he's saying it's his responsibility, his zeren, for the company if anything happens to it, because he's the owner. And then it says, throughout the day, Lai answered quickly. So he had quick answers and confidently, lots of confidence, frequently jumping in before his defense lawyer even had finished asking the question. So, of course, he has a lawyer, right? His lawyer is defending him. This is his lawyer. You should. But it's funny when he says jumping in before his lawyer asks the question. So maybe the lawyer is asking him a question before the lawyer finishes asking the question. He's already answered the question, right? So if you say, I jumped in before he finished asking, so let's say I'm saying, well, what if this, and you already answer. That means you jumped in before the lawyer, before I finish asking the question, okay? So that's a way of saying it, okay? So let's read this. It's right for me to take up the responsibility of the company if anything happened to it. As an owner, he said, throughout the day, Lai answered quickly and confidently, frequently jumping in before his defense lawyer had even finished asking a question. Okay. So it says here, much of the afternoon was spent delving, this word delving, into Lai's interactions with executives of his now shuttered Apple Daily tabloid, several of whom have testified against him. Okay. Now, of course, I think this was yesterday. So this is much of yesterday afternoon was spent delving into his interactions. Okay. Of course, first of all, interaction means your exchange, your interaction, right? Right now we are interacting with each other, right? I'm saying something, you're saying something. So we have an interaction. So it just means when you interact with somebody, it means you're having an exchange with them. Maybe you're talking to them. Well, usually we're talking to each other. There could be other interactions as well, but yeah. So why don't we say together, interact. Interaction. Okay. Now here it says delving into his interactions with. What does to delve into something mean? Yeah, to go deeply. Maybe another word would say to dig into. If you dig, D-I-G, to dig into something means you go deeply into something. So if you delve into something, it means you're exploring, you're digging more deeply into something. Yeah. I guess you could say that. Diving into, dive is to, 潜水, to jump into. But yeah, delve into. So let's say, for example, you're asking somebody about their history, their past, and you say, well, let's delve into the history of your company, or let's delve into why you decided to do that. It means let's go deeper. Let's try to understand this more deeply. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Dive and delve. I think they're very similar. Yeah. No, you can't use it that way. Dive is only used for, if you say for like 潜水, we can only use the word dive. But for the word delve means to go deeply or then we can say dive or delve, okay? So why don't we say together delve, delving. Okay, and then that word dive. Okay, so delving into his interactions with executives, okay, these are like officers in his now shuttered Apple Daily tabloid. Now, when we say now shuttered, first of all, what does shuttered mean? Closed. Okay. Why do we use the word shuttered? Does anyone know? What is a shutter? Yeah. So in Taiwan, there's many, tou tian, right? And when they're closing at the end of the day, when they're 下班, right? They have this big metal shutter and they pull it down, right? They close the entrance. That sliding door entrance, it usually comes from the top on down. We call that a shutter. Now, of course, some shutters open this way. Like sometimes you have a shutter on a window. But when I think of a shutter, I think of a store and that big gate that you slide down. We call that a shutter. Okay, it's a kind of a door, but a sliding door. goes up and down. So if you say we shutter a business, it means that we close the business. 你关门了, right? Okay, so it says now shutter. Of course, now it's closed. It's gone. Okay, so why don't we say together, shutter. Shutter. Now shuttered. Now shuttered. Okay, now there's another word here that's very interesting. Tabloid. Okay, tabloid is a kind of newspaper. And I'll tell you, I'll describe it to you. I think you know what I'm talking about. Often a tabloid newspaper is it's not like your traditional newspaper. The front page is just big letters, big words, and there's big pictures. And it doesn't look like a normal newspaper. And often the front page is a very strong 头条, 新闻. It's very big words. And it's a kind of newspaper. I don't know how you say this in Chinese. Yeah, like sometimes they'll have like gossip, or something about a famous person. Now some tabloids are a little bit, I don't know, they're not too good. The news is a lot of, I say, 乐色新闻, but some tabloids are pretty good. I mean, they're okay. 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 I'll tell you, in London and New York City, they have what? Well, okay. Forget National Enquirer is 乐色新闻, okay? Inquirer. So if you go to any supermarket, 超级市场 in 美国, you'll see a newspaper. It's called the National Enquirer. Oh, but it's garbage. It really is. The National Enquirer, you know what inquire means? Inquire means to ask, right? To ask. So National Enquirer, their news is actually, it's not even, it really is like they print all kinds of really strange 奇怪的新闻. Like they like to run stories about UFOs, UFOs and strange, things that they say that have happened. And people read it. Honestly, most people read it for entertainment. They don't read it for news. They read it for entertainment because the stories are so 奇怪的, okay? So yeah, every supermarket in America, 美国, you will see the National Enquirer. When you go to checkout, when you buy your products, there's a great jazz, then you'll see the National Enquirer there, and people pick it up. But that's not real news. So in America, one of the most famous tabloids is New York Post, the New York 纽约邮报. Okay, there's also another one called New York Daily News, 日报, well, not be 日报, it'd be Daily News, I guess it'd be whatever. Those are tabloid newspapers. In London, a very famous one is called The Sun, like 太阳, right? The London Sun. Those are tabloid newspapers. So some tabloids are good and others are a little bit 奇怪的. Okay. It's a kind of newspaper. Yeah. So we could say tabloid newspaper. Or it tends to have bigger headlines on the front page, big pictures, Off a tabloid, their whole goal is when you see the newspaper, you want to pick it up. Usually because there's a big headline and there's a big photograph, big picture. And when you see, you're like, oh, I have to read this, right? So you take it. That's what we call it. So let's say together, tabloid. Tabloid. It's funny because Next used to have a magazine. What is that called? In Taiwan. Yeah. It was in all the 7-Elevens here. Every time I would go to the 7-Eleven, there would be the magazine on the front. It was owned by Apple, I think. Wasn't it? It's called? Yeah. Yeah. So as soon as you saw, there was always like a photograph of a movie star or some scandal. And then you would like, oh, okay, I have to read this, right? Okay. So let's read this together. Much of the afternoon was spent delving into, let's say it again, delving into Lai's interactions with executives of his now shuttered Apple Daily tabloid. Tabloid. Several of whom have testified against him. Okay, so it's saying some of his former executives, they're testifying against. They're saying that he did something illegal. Okay. I think they probably do. Yeah. So you mean both sides can question the witness? Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a legal expert, but I think it's similar in that way. I think it's similar to the US system, is you can examine back and forth. No, definitely not. But you still have the British court system. So it's very interesting. This has made the news recently, but the British High Court still has, I think, 7 foreign judges. You know, they're 法官 are 外国人. Some are from England, 英国, some are from Canada, some are from Australia. Commonwealth, yeah. But I know that recently, I think at least 2 of them resigned. They stepped down to protest, 抗议 this system. They think it's getting harder and harder to be, So, but I know that there's still foreign judges in Hong Kong in their high court. Actually, even in the lower court, there's some foreign judges too. Sometimes I'm reading a newspaper and they'll talk about a Hong Kong court case, and they'll give the judge's name, and it's a Westerner, Xi Fangren. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. So they still use the British court system. I don't know. One other thing that's when Americans see it, they think it's very funny. In British courts, the judge, they wear a wig. Yeah, what do I say wig in Chinese? Yeah, they wear this wig. It's kind of funny. Wig is W-I-G, right? And they wear a special wig. Yeah. What? I have no idea. I think it's like a costume, right? It's like saying this person is the judge. I honestly, that would be a very good research to understand where. I'm sure that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, but why? Why do they keep doing that? I don't know. I mean, I don't know, and why it's long too, right? It's kind of long, so I don't know why. I don't know. It just looks kind of crazy. But anyhow, so let's read a couple more sentences, and then we'll maybe try a second story. It says here, in response to former Apple Daily editorial writer Yong Ching Key's testimony that Lai had radicalized from 2014 onward, he was dismissive. Okay, I don't know how he got that. No, sorry, I don't know how he got this impression. I rarely talk to him. If I was radical, I was radical all along. Okay, so what does radical mean? Extreme, yeah. It means you have very strong, extreme views. Now, you can be a radical leftist, or you can be a radical right on the radical right. In America, sometimes we talk about the far left or the far right. Okay, so someone who is just on the far side of one side or the other, we call that a radical person. So if you have radical ideas, it means your ideas are not they're not held by most people, or they're not considered normal ideas for most people. They're a little bit extreme. Okay, so sometimes we call that person, we could also say a person who is an extremist. Okay. And so these words all are kind of related to each other. So why don't we say together radical? Radical. Now, this doesn't have to be, remember, this doesn't have to be a political idea. For example, like Elon Musk, right? Sometimes he has some very radical ideas, right, about technology. What can we do with technology, and where can we go with technology? Even, for Apple, Stephen Jobs, sometimes his ideas are a little bit radical. Like what can we do? The iPhone, was kind of radical at the beginning. So anyhow, radical can have many different meanings. Yeah, if an artist, a 艺术家 can be radical. You look at their work and you're like, wow, okay, that's really unusual. I've never seen that before. Okay, so here it says he's responding. Okay, so this Apple Daily editorial writer, he wrote opinion articles, testified, he gave a testimony that Lai had radicalized. So it means that Lai became radical. If someone is radicalized or they radicalize someone else from 2014 onwards, starting in 2014 and on from there, he was dismissive. This is a good word. If you are dismissive about something, what does that mean? Yeah, but it also means you dismiss the argument. You say that's ridiculous. That's crazy, right? So when you dismiss something, it means that you just say that it doesn't mean anything, right? If you, let's say you come to me with an idea, you say, well, I think we should do this, and I dismiss your idea, it means I just don't even think about it. I'm not even going to consider it. It's not even something I want to think about. So if you are dismissive, it means, no, I'm just not going to even, that's not even close to being true. Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay, so why don't we say to dismiss, to dismiss, dismissive, dismissive. I will say sometimes when someone is dismissive, it kind of is a bit of, it's almost like you don't really respect that person or what they say. So if I was dismissive of someone's ideas, it really sounds like I don't respect them or I don't respect their ideas. I don't really care. So I'm just dismissive, you know. So yeah, so he was dismissive. He says, I don't know how he got this impression. I mean, I don't know how he got this idea. I rarely talk to him. If I was radical, I was radical all along. So he's saying I didn't become radicalized in 2014. If I was that way, I was always that way. So yeah. Okay. Let's read this. In response to former Apple Daily editorial writer Yong-Ching Key's testimony that Lai had radicalized, Lai had radicalized from 2014 onward, he was dismissive. I don't know how he got this impression. I rarely talk to him. If I was radical, I was radical all along. Lai said. Okay. Let's look at this one more sentence and then we'll go to a different article. It says, he denied dictating editorial direction, which has been charged as being seditious at his outlets. Now, first of all, I think we've talked about sedition is a means and seditious is a 形容词. What does seditious mean? Treason, yes. It means sedition equals, and treason, what does treason mean? It means to betray your country, right? So if someone says, I want to overthrow the Taiwanese government, I want to betray my country, it means I want to plot against my own country, to betray, right? This is a 动词. To betray your country. That is treason. Now, this is only used for countries. This is not used for people, right? You can betray a person, but if you betray your country, then that is considered treason, and that is also known as sedition. But sedition, I will say this, sedition is more like to speak against your country, to say something or write something against your country, whereas treason is a broad idea, like you betray your country, but sedition is more like you talk or write against your country. You're trying to undermine, your country by saying something or doing something or more it's like writing something. Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay, so treason is a very serious crime, right, in many countries. In some countries, if you're accused of treason, you could get the death penalty, right? Some countries will execute or kill a person if they're guilty of treason. And so, yeah, it's a very serious crime. So why don't we say together, sedition, sedition, seditious, seditious, and then treason, treason, to betray, to betray. It's funny, the most famous, and the person who is guilty of treason is called a what? A traitor. Okay. So in America, the most famous traitor in American history, and I think most of you have probably never heard of this guy. His name is Benedict Arnold. Okay. Now, during the American Revolution, 美国革命, he was a general in the American Army, the side that was fighting for independence. His name was General Benedict Arnold. So he was a general for George Washington, and he fought well, but then he decided to betray Americans, and he secretly plotted with the British against the Americans, against George Washington, against American independence freedom fighters, and he was caught. They caught him, and I believe he was hung. But yeah, so when Americans hear this name Benedict Arnold, or they say you're Benedict Arnold, it means you are a traitor to your country. Okay, so it's a very I don't think they like him either. I don't think the British really care, right? In Britain, there's a very famous traitor, and they actually celebrate his the day that he tried to kill the king. I don't know. I don't. Guy Fawkes. Is it? Okay. So on this day, they set off lots of fireworks, and because what he tried to do was he planted all this explosives, and he tried to blow up a building and kill the parliament, I think. Yeah, their 立法院. He tried to blow it up, and they caught him, and so now they have this. It's kind of a fun day. It's more 好玩的, it's not serious, but it's called Guy Fawkes Day. I think I'm spelling that correctly. But yeah, so he's considered a great traitor, a famous traitor in British history. Okay, so why don't we say this together? Let's say this word here, traitor. Traitor. Okay, yeah. Of course, there's been many famous traitors throughout history. Yeah. Okay, so here he says he denied dictating editorial direction. So it means he denied that he didn't tell the editorial, the newspaper, what to write. He didn't dictate. Dictate, of course, means that I order you, I command you to write something. So if you dictate something, dictate actually has two kinds of ideas. One is, you know the word dictator, right? Dictator. Many people say, well, someone like Xi Jinping is a dictator because he controls everything. He tells people what to do. But dictate can also mean to speak, to say something, and then people usually will write it down. Okay, so many 老板, they don't want to write it or 打字 or write it down. So they have a secretary, like a 秘书, and they will dictate a letter. They will say, okay, please dictate this. And then they'll say, dear Mr. Smith, I want to write to you today. And they're just talking. And then the secretary is typing the letter. So that's called to dictate a letter, means to say it to that person, and then the other person writes it down. Okay, so that's a different kind of idea. So here he denied dictating editorial direction, which has been charged as being seditious. So they said his editorial, the content, the 内容 of his newspapers was seditious. Okay, so let's read this, and then we'll see if we can quickly look at another article. He denied dictating editorial direction. direction, which has been charged as being seditious at his outlets. Right. Okay. Any questions about this? Anything? Well, yeah. Right. Maybe he'd get off. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? Well, and I will say though, I do think what he did was courageous, because I think it'd been very easy for him to just leave Hong Kong, just get out of there and leave. But I think he stayed in Hong Kong to fight for this cause. And of course, now he might spend the rest of his life in prison. In fact, I think there's a good chance that he will spend the rest of his life in prison. So yeah, it's a difficult thing. So anyhow, let's see here. I thought I saw another story that was kind of interesting. Well, we have a little bit of time. Let's quickly look at this story. It's a U.S. Of course, everyone right now is paying attention to Donald Trump and his cabinet. Okay. Now, you know the word cabinet, right? Do you know what I mean when I say cabinet? His team. But it's like in Taiwan, we would call it a 行政院, right? Okay. So in America, whenever we have a new president, the president will choose a cabinet, okay? And this word might seem kind of strange to you, because what is a cabinet? What is normally a cabinet? Or a place to put books, right? Like a piece of furniture, okay? So like in my living room, I have a book cabinet, right? It's like it has doors and shelves, and I can put my books there, right? It's a book cabinet. Sometimes you put dishes, like your panwan, in a cabinet, right? It's like a place you store it. But here, you notice, of course, we use the capital C, C, which means cabinet. It means it's like your different, in Taiwan, I guess we would say 部长, right? Who's going to be your different people in your cabinet. So right now, Donald Trump is choosing or announcing his cabinet, okay? And everybody's very curious and 好奇, right? Who's going to be doing what? So why don't we say together, cabinet. And I don't know if you've been following this news, but Donald Trump has been picking some very unusual people for his cabinet. Okay, it's very funny, because I know people in Washington D.C., 美国首都, most of them probably really hate his choices for cabinet, because they're not insiders. Okay. You know what an insider is? Somebody who comes from the inside of the system. These people, many of them, I'd say maybe most of them, not all of them, but are outsiders. They're not people who have been working in Washington, D.C. for many years. They're people that have come from the outside in. But I think, this is actually very much what Donald Trump wants to do. He wants to shake up the system. He wants to change the system. So he's bringing in outside people to become cabinet members. So here it says, Trump picks Oz to run health agencies. Culture wars. Trump has also named a wrestling mogul to head education amid promises to remove what he sees as left-wing indoctrination in schools in the U.S. Okay, so we'll talk about Oz. Actually, Oz is quite well known. But it says here, Trump has also named a wrestling mogul. You know what wrestling is? How do you say this in Chinese? Yeah, mogul. So they're a business person in wrestling. They're in the business of this. Why don't we say this together? Wrestling. Wrestling. In America, we have a very famous, it's called WWF, wrestling. And people, I know you can watch it on TV here in Taiwan, but we call that professional wrestling. Okay. So that wrestling mogul to head up education. So they're the 教育部部长. Okay. amid promises, okay, he's made promises to remove what he sees, what he thinks is left-wing indoctrination. Now, this is a very interesting word. It comes from a 动词 to indoctrinate, T-E. Indoctrinate, does anyone know what this word means? A little bit. So if you indoctrinate somebody, it means you change their thinking. You change the way they think. Now, he used the word that's actually, it's much more simple, and some people would use this word, but we call that to brainwash. What do they call it? 洗脑, right? Or whatever. So indoctrinate is the same kind of idea. It means you use education or whatever. There could be other ways to change someone's thinking, to completely change them. Okay? So why don't we say together, to brainwash. To brainwash. Okay, and then as a 动词, to indoctrinate. To indoctrinate. And then as a 名词, indoctrination. Indoctrination. Okay, so Donald Trump says that the education system has been doing or promoting left wing. This means left, radical left, 左边, left wing indoctrination in schools. Okay, so he's against that. Well, not all, but I would say that American education has definitely moved that direction. I think that this is why, there's many reasons that Donald Trump won the election, but I think this is probably one of those things, one of many things that many Americans are very uncomfortable with this. They feel like their children or university students have become very radicalized, very, very more left-wing, and so they don't like it at all. This is Donald Trump's, he wants to change that, okay? So let's quickly look at couple paragraphs here. It says, U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday selected, I don't know how to say his name, Mehmed Oz, a former TV talk show host and heart surgeon, to head the agency that oversees health insurance programs for millions of older, poor, and disabled Americans. Okay, so this is a government agency that oversees health insurance. Like in Taiwan, we have 健保, right? So health insurance programs for millions of older, poor, and disabled Americans. You know what the word disabled means, right? Okay, we have people that are physically disabled or mentally disabled. They have some sort of challenge. Sometimes in America, we use the word challenged, physically challenged, mentally challenged. Some people don't like the word disabled, but obviously it's still okay. People use it, disabled. So why don't we say it together, disabled. Disabled. How do you say this word in Chinese? Yeah. So, like there's many kinds of, people are disabled for many different reasons. Okay. So this guy, Mehmed Oz, which, when I look at the name, this name here is very Middle Eastern, Zongdong, or Turkey, Turkish. Okay, yeah. It's definitely not a Western name. Okay, so he's very well known. He has a TV show and he's a doctor, and he is he's a former TV talk show host, 主持人, and a heart surgeon. Isn't Ke Pi a heart surgeon also? Ke Wen-zhe, isn't he a heart surgeon? Oh, really? I thought he did that. Anyhow, I don't want to talk about Ke Pi today, but anyhow, yeah. So let's read this here. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on Tuesday selected Mehmed Oz, a former TV talk show host and heart surgeon, to head the agency that oversees health insurance programs for millions of older, poor, and disabled Americans. Let's say it again, disabled Americans. What would be another word for overseas? Yeah, supervise. Okay. So the word to supervise, that's a U. S-U-P-E-R-V-I-S-E. To supervise, to oversee, to look after. Okay. So why don't we say that word together? Supervise. Supervise. So that's where we say someone is a supervisor. Okay, that's the name, or we could say an overseer with an R, S-E-E-R. Okay, but supervisor is probably a more common title. Okay, it says here he also tapped billionaire professional wrestling mogul Linda McMahon to be his Secretary of Education, tasked with overseeing an agency he has promised to dismantle, and named Wall Street executive Howard Lutnick to lead the Commerce Department. Okay, so I don't know if we've talked about this before, but when you say you tap somebody, now you might think that's kind of strange, right? Because tap means to tap things. You tap somebody's shoulder, right? But when you tap someone to do something, what does that mean? Yeah, nominate or to choose. Okay, I think nominate is probably the best word. So, we've talked about this before. These people need to be approved by Congress. Okay? So, 美国大会 has to approve. He can choose them, but then they have to go through a approval process. Okay? So, when we say he taps somebody, it means it's almost like saying, I choose you. I want you to do this. Okay? But then, of course, they've been nominated. Of course, they're not officially I don't think they're officially part of, they don't have the position until Congress approves it. So why don't we say together, tapped, tapped, and then that word, nominated, nominated. Okay, so this person is a billionaire, okay, they're very wealthy, professional wrestling mogul, Linda McMahon, to be his Secretary of Education. So again, that would be like the 教育部长, okay? Tasked with, okay, I mean, their job is, when we say, what is your task? Task is another word for job, right? So tasked with means you've been given the job. It's like becomes you can say, I've been tasked with finishing this project. It means I've been given the job of. So tasked with what? Overseeing an agency, an organization he has promised to dismantle. Now, this is a great word, and I don't know if we've ever learned this, but what does dismantle mean? Well, it has a specific meaning. It means to take apart, to take something apart. So let's say, for example, you have a machine, a 机器, right? And it's broken. So what do? You dismantle it. You take it apart so that you can see what's wrong. And then what do you have to do? What's the opposite of dismantle? Assemble, yes. So then you have to assemble, A-S-S-E-M-B-L-E. Or if you dismantle it, we could say to reassemble. Reassemble means to put back together again, okay? So dismantle means to take apart. Now, of course, I don't know if you know this, but Donald Trump has said that the Department of Education, get rid of it, 取消, okay? That's not a national government organization. He says the states, 每个州, they have their own education department. We don't need a central government Department of Education. Okay, so he has promised to dismantle that group or the agency. So why don't we say together, dismantle, dismantle, and then this word, assemble, assemble, reassemble, reassemble. Okay, and then finally we have this Wall Street executive, this businessman, Howard Lutnick, is the head of the Commerce Department. That's like the 商业部, right? Yeah, the Commerce Department. Okay, or sometimes we say Department of Commerce. Okay, so let's read this real quick and then we'll be done. It says, he also tapped billionaire professional wrestling mogul. One more time, professional wrestling mogul Linda McMahon to be his Secretary of Education, tasked with overseeing an agency he has promised to dismantle, and named Wall Street executive Howard Lutnick to lead the Commerce Department. Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is a kind of a new invention. So there wasn't, before there was not a Department of Education. That was created by, I forget which president. But anyhow, that's where Donald Trump says, we don't need that. Get rid of it. So anyhow, yeah, kind of. The what? Oh, the foreign illegal immigrants. Yeah, foreign or undocumented immigrants or whatever you call them. I think something, I don't know. It's kind of, it doesn't look real good, but I think he thinks that it's such a big problem that the police cannot handle it by themselves and the immigration authorities cannot handle it by themselves. So you need the National Guard to help with this process. So I don't know. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with that? It's a big situation. So, yeah. Okay, any other questions? Well, that's all we have time for today, so we'll see you next time. Thank you.
大家如果还有时间的话，帮我填一下，这是这个月的问卷，就11月的我帮我填个问卷，然后就填完问卷来找我领个笔记本当做感谢，谢谢。